Hey there guys, I'm Michelle. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that I've never really spoken about before. I may have mentioned it a little bit here and there. Today I wanted to actually talk to you guys about my own mental health, physical health, and actually a diagnosis that I have because I officially have a chronic illness that I was actually diagnosed with almost 15 years ago. And today I wanted to talk about it because January is actually Thyroid Disease Awareness Month. A big thing is that, like, statistically, 5 out of every 100 Americans have a thyroid condition that's like ages 12 and up. 5 out of 100. That's 20% of Americans have thyroid conditions. But no one's ever really heard of a thyroid. So I really wanted to share my diagnosis, share my story, and give you guys some facts about hypothyroid, especially because that is actually what I have. I have hypothyroidism, and I was diagnosed at the ripe age of 14. And I've been on medication every single day since. So today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about all of it. I want to tell you guys the symptoms. I want to tell you guys how it's diagnosed. And mostly I kind of just want to encourage you guys to, it's honestly a simple blood test to get tested or to be diagnosed. So really, like, I really want that number to go down. 20% of Americans alone have a thyroid disease, and more than 50% of them are undiagnosed. And that is a huge deal because your thyroid has so much control over you. Like, you have no idea. It's got so much control, and it's affected my life in so many ways. But without further ado, I'm just going to get into the facts right now. So first things first, you might be asking, what is a thyroid? Where is it? And what does it do? So the thyroid gland is a butterfly-shaped gland located in the front of your throat underneath the Adam's apple. It plays a major role in your metabolism, in your growth, in your development, and essentially, if you have an undiagnosed thyroid condition, it could lead to serious heart damage, heart failure, lupus. It could lead to so many worse conditions. And that is why I'm really pushing for everyone to start thinking about just the possibility. So now you might be asking, what are some of the symptoms of an underactive thyroid? Let me tell you. Poor memory and concentration, poor hearing, hoarseness in voice, low or slow heart rate, delayed reflex, sensitivity to cold, carpal tunnel, fatigue, weight gain, hair thinning or hair loss, shortness of breath, dry skin, constipation, infertility, irregular or heavy periods, and so many more. So diagnosis of hypothyroid or of any thyroid disease is generally pretty easy. It's generally done with a blood test, and if they have any concerns, then they might perform an ultrasound as well. But the blood test is generally the first step, and what they're doing is they're checking for your TSH levels and your thyroid hormone levels. So my personal story is when I was 13, I was actually on a baseball team. I was a very active child, but I was actually very thin. Admittedly, when I look back, when I was 13, I was tiny. I was like a size 1 in jeans. I ran a lot. I was very active. But then when I was 14, I was on a baseball team again, but my muscles didn't work like they used to. And you have to think, it was only a year in between, but it was like I was still doing everything I used to do. I was still playing badminton with my sister. I was still running on the track. I was still doing everything I always did. But for some reason, like, I could put all my effort into throwing and it wouldn't go anywhere. I wasn't able to run nearly as fast as I was when I was 13. Like, my entire body, my mood, my mental health, it all just, like, between the ages of 13 and 14 just dipped. Like, everything was off. And that wasn't even what made us make the doctor's appointment. what made us make the doctor's appointment was that I would literally like just lose my breath. Like it felt like I was drowning in the middle of like a classroom. And then like almost every other time I stood up, it was like I just lost all my balance. I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. I got room spins regularly. And yeah, then suddenly like a couple months after I turned 14, like I was in 9th grade, I started gaining weight like rapidly, to the point where I went from size 1 jeans in grade 8 to size 5s by the time I was 14 in grade 9. And that started my insecurities, and I actually developed an eating disorder at that point. And so after that, pretty much everything I felt probably was just related to how I was eating. But I didn't want to change it because I was gaining weight so rapidly. It was crazy to me, and I was so self-conscious. I was tired all the time. I was getting the room spins. I had no motivation to do anything. And I was the kid that's like, I'm gonna be a rock star, a video producer. I'm gonna be a novelist. Like I had so many big dreams, so many things I wanted to do. And just suddenly like I couldn't even get myself out of bed anymore. Like it was night and day from the year before. And eventually like my parents were like, okay, we got to get her into the doctor because something's going on. We don't know what, but something's going on. I go to the doctor and I'm getting a physical done. He's doing everything. So, you know, he's feeling my hair, he's touching my face, he's looking in my ears, he's looking in my eyes, he's lifting things, poking things, hitting things with the mallet thingy. Like he did all of it. But the one thing, or the two things, I guess, that he circled back to a lot. First of all, okay, he made a comment about my hands being cold, and my dad goes, well, she's Frosty. We've always called her Frosty ever since she was a kid. That's been her nickname, was Frosty. So that's true. My dad called me Frosty for like the majority of my life. But then, so the second major thing was he put his hands on my throat, and he felt and he felt, and he tilted his head, and he felt and he felt, and he tilted his head. But he didn't say anything. So he does the rest, everything else, you know, breathe in, breathe out, all of that. And then he took out his little reflex mallet, hammer, majigger, and he tapped my right knee, and nothing happened. So he tapped it again. And about 3 seconds later, my leg finally kicked. It was very, very delayed. And he's like, well, that was a little slow. And I'm like, sorry, I'll do better next time. But he did the same thing to the left knee. He tapped it, and like 2 or 3 seconds later, my leg finally kicked. So he's like, all right. So he said, before like the appointment was even over, he's like, okay, so as of right now, I'm going to tell you that if you look at her face, like straight for face to face, you can see that her neck is swollen. And my parents are like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? He's like, well, it could mean a couple things. So, and he started listing out things. He said it could just be a goiter. And basically that's just a nothing. It's just my throat's swelling. It's just basically a dark patch for no reason. And then he said it could be hypothyroid, which would explain a couple of my other symptoms as well. And he said, finally, there is a possibility that it's cancer. And so he said, what we're going to do is we're going to give her blood tests once every 2 weeks for 6 months. And we're going to give her an ultrasound once or twice a month for 6 months. So if you can imagine what it's like to be 14 years old and telling a teacher I have to leave, and them saying, well, why do you have to leave? And you say, well, I have an ultrasound. People hear that. Actually, this boy I was quite fond of in high school overheard, and he instantly yelled, oh my God, is Michelle pregnant? And I remember how red my face went. I remember how hot my face got. And I remember just like, I didn't say anything. I just left. I walked out of the classroom. I was like, oh my God, how embarrassing that this kid that I actually really like is now like going to start telling everyone that I'm pregnant. So that's cool. But yeah, so at the end of the day, we had like it was like 3 months later, I went in for a conversation with my doctor, and he said, we've officially ruled out that it's a goiter. So we're now trying to figure out whether it's hypothyroidism or whether it's cancer that's causing her thyroid to be underactive. So I think that day, my mom, myself, my dad, mom went home to her house and I went home to my dad's house, and dad went in to talk to his girlfriend and I went outside. It was in August. I went outside with my sister at this point, and I just started crying because I was like, I don't want to die. That's, you know, you hear cancer and that's instantly what you think is, oh my God, I'm dying. And as dramatic as that may have been, remember I was also 14. I guess at that point, yeah, I would have like just freshly turned 14 or 15 at that point. Then I just kept going to my tests, going to baseball practice, trying my best to eat healthier, trying my best to get over the disorder I was having, which didn't really work. But then eventually after the ultrasounds and the blood test span was over, so 6 months had passed. So we are now into November of 2007. So yeah, 9th grade, 10th grade, whatever. 10th grade, I guess, had officially started. And they called me in for a biopsy. It was scheduled, and that's what I was supposed to do. And I literally went in. They actually prepped me. They had me lay down on the little mattress thingy, and the doctor came in and he said, you know what? I don't want to break what isn't broken or fix what isn't broken. So as of right now, your diagnosis is hypothyroidism. And he said that he wants me to continue to get ultrasounds 3 times a year for the rest of my life. So I have. And I've had a lot of like growths come and go. I had like a golf ball shaped or sized lump right here for like 4 years that they monitored, and they had to measure it, and every single time I had an ultrasound, I was pretty tight with my doctor, I'll say that. But at the end of the day, a lot of the symptoms that I experienced were like fatigue, muscle fatigue, exhaustion. Wouldn't even have to do anything and I'd be tired. I'd wake up in the morning, walk downstairs, grab a bowl of cereal and be ready for a nap. Like, it made no sense. I'd fall asleep reading. I could fall asleep in class. I fell asleep everywhere, every opportunity, every car ride. But then, like, as I said earlier, weight gain. I would feel like palpitations in my heart. It felt like I would feel like my heart was slow. Like I said, loss of like breath, dry skin. Oh, my memory and my concentration was crazy. And like, I think that's also a big thing is I was a straight A student. So why is it that I could memorize things and remember like 4 chapters worth of history notes, but I couldn't remember what I had for breakfast this morning? Like, why was it that I could recite to you every bone in the body, but I couldn't remember the name of the girl who sat next to me yesterday? Like, it was just very patchy memory as well. But yeah, at the end of the day, I have now been on medication. I think it's actually for 13 years now. And I have experienced days where I've forgotten to take my meds, or weeks. I've actually had a full week recently that I actually ran out of prescription and didn't realize, and I couldn't get a hold of my doctor. And you don't realize how bad you are off until you experience your symptoms without treatment. Like, in that week, my body, I had no control of my body at all. I had anxiety attacks and panic attacks like you wouldn't believe, mood swings, and like my hair was literally just falling out. Like, every time I like moved my hair, like, it was falling out. My memory was trash. My mood was trash. Eating was barely an option. I didn't have any sort of an appetite for that full week. And plus I'm also on other medication for another illness. And my body just wasn't handling that either, because that's a hormone treatment as well. And my body just basically shut down. I took days off work. I it was impossible to parent, I swear. Like, I didn't even realize how many patients I had until I didn't have my medication. But like, at the end of the day, like, even now, even like 13, 14 years later, it's crazy to me, because I don't like to use my hypothyroidism as an excuse for anything, even though I know that it's always going to affect my life every single day, forever. Some days just aren't as good as others. Some days I have the energy. Some days I have great mindset, great mood. I'm ready to do everything. I can make a full list and get it all done. And other days I struggle. I put things off. I cry. I just get, some days I just can't. And that's like something that I've really been working on, especially being on YouTube and everything too, is like I'm really pushing myself to create content. And unfortunately, sometimes I don't feel well enough or feel up to going and doing some of the things I really, really want to do. Like, I've canceled trips last minute because I run out of medication. I've canceled trips last minute because my body just doesn't feel right. I've canceled going places and doing things just because I just didn't feel up to it that day. And I mean, I always feel bad saying like I don't feel up to it. I just don't feel good, but it's not something that I can explain, because, you know, it's all I really know. The way I feel is all I really know. I don't know how Bobby, Sue, and Joey feel all the rest of the days, right? I don't know how they feel, but I know how I feel. And maybe if I were to step into their bodies, I would be relieved. And if they were to step into mine, they'd feel the weight that I feel. But I think at the end of the day, like, you know, it's hard. It's a very, very hard illness to live with, because I keep asking myself, like, why can't I do what these people are doing? Why can't I be motivated every morning when I wake up? Why am I not on top of the world like I always planned I would be? And at the end of the day, like, I know that I have to be easier on myself than I am, because at the end of the day, I do have a chronic illness. At the end of the day, I have to remember that what my body is going through and what I'm going through, not everybody else is feeling and seeing. And it, you know, I have to stop comparing myself to people who aren't going through what I'm going through. And that's a really hard thing a really hard pill to swallow. I am happy that I was diagnosed as young as I was, because had I not have been diagnosed at a young age, I might not have even ever known. And then I could be dealing with much more serious issues, such as heart disease, hearing loss, obesity, anemia, so many different illnesses. Like I said earlier, you have a higher chance of developing other autoimmune diseases such as lupus, and the such. I'm not really brushed up on all of these health conditions, but I've done my work, I've done my studying on hypothyroidism, because it's not really something everyone knows about. Now, with that being said, I have mentioned before that there is actually an episode of a TV show that I relate to, because one of the characters actually has hypothyroidism. And although I do not wish to spoil that episode for you, it's a very, very old, I think it's almost older than me, honestly. That show is Home Improvement, and in season 7, there's an episode called The Longest Day, and that episode is about the middle son, Randy, and his diagnosis with hypothyroidism. And he actually goes through a very, very, very similar fight that I did, where basically they dropped all these words in front of him, and now he's like left with all of this information, but doesn't really know what any of it means. So he goes and looks it all up by himself, and in between his diagnosis and his testing stage, I guess. And honestly, I really relate to everything he went through in that episode, because I honestly went through it as well. I remember being in 9th grade and sitting on the computer at school and researching stuff and trying my hardest not to cry, and printing off it was like $3 worth of sheets that I took home and I highlighted. I scared the hell out of myself, in all honesty. But at the end of the day, like, I always have to remind myself Michelle, you have an autoimmune disease. There's nothing you, the doctors, or anyone else can do to help you. It's all about how you help yourself. Make sure you're taking your medications properly and on time. You have to take them with very little water. You can't have any food in your stomach. Can't take any vitamins before or after within 2 hours. Can't take any other medications before or after within 2 hours. Like, there's so many things that you have to keep in mind in order to make sure your medication is doing what it should be doing. And then to tie in that I have a second illness as well, which is I have PCOS, which is a female disease. Lucky for the gentleman, I suppose, in the room. But yeah, so it's at the end of the day, I wanted to educate, because this is a life-changing illness, and the fact that it can be diagnosed and maintained with a simple blood test. I mean, if you feel any of the symptoms I've mentioned, then what harm is there in just going and talking to your doctor? So thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for listening to all my facts and statistics about hypothyroidism. And yeah, I just really hope that if you have any of these symptoms, you will feel comfortable going to speak to your family doctor, getting that simple blood test to rule it out. It's pretty simple. Like, some of the symptoms I understand can go right under the radar, because everyone gets tired once in a while. When you get tired, your muscles get tired. When you get tired, your mind gets fuzzy. Everyone gets tired once in a while, and that's actually one of the biggest symptoms. So if you find that no matter how much you sleep, no matter how well you eat, you just feel like you're dragged down, that is a huge sign, and you should go speak to your doctor for sure. But again, if you have unexplained weight gain or weight loss, because actually pretty much the opposite of all of these. So unexplained weight loss, actually never being able to sleep, that could be hyperthyroid, and that can be just as dangerous. So there's a lot of different thyroid diseases out there. So just keep that in mind and talk to your friends, talk to your family, and if you ever hear any of them mention some of these symptoms, or heck, even if it just comes up in conversation, try to encourage them to get tested, because at the end of the day, it wouldn't hurt. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to my story, and again, please take what I said to heart. Please talk to your doctor if you feel any of these symptoms, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.